Incredible moment at the bus station. Little girl's silent signal reveals dog's unexpected loyalty. Sarah sat on the rough bench, her anxiety swelling with each passing second. The sun bathed the tiny bus station in warmth, yet an undercurrent of doubt nagged at her heart. She'd made plenty of sacrifices as a single mother, and today was supposed to be about Emily's first day at summer camp, a fresh beginning. Instead, the thought of her mother, Edna, arriving only heightened Sarah's dread. What would Edna think? Would she judge her parenting once again? Every time Sarah thought they were making progress in their relationship, a crack would appear, echoing the fractures of their past. Sarah glanced down at Emily, whose excitement glittered in her bright eyes. The brochure crinkled between the girl's tiny fingers, an emblem of the adventures that awaited her, and yet the shadows in Sarah's thoughts overshadowed that optimism. She inhaled sharply, feeling the grip of expectation on her chest. Emily deserved a caring mother, a mother who could mask her nerves and fear, but every tick of the clock made Sarah's breath more irregular. As families rushed by, families that exuded togetherness, Sarah felt the weight of isolation creep in. What if today turned into another disappointment, just like so many others? What if, despite her best efforts, Emily didn't thrive as Sarah had hoped? The swell of guilt emerged, each wave crashing harder than the last. Her thoughts consumed her as the joy of the camp announcement faded into a murmur of predictions about how Emily might feel, and Sarah's fears began to spiral out of control. Before Sarah could recalibrate her overwhelming thoughts, a commotion arose at the vending machines. 4 teenagers instigated trouble with an elderly man who stood frail and vulnerable, reminding Sarah of the very lessons Edna had imparted: stand up for the weak. You have a voice. The sight ignited something deep within her, a protective instinct, but the surge came with anguish. What if she failed? Would she be that mother who taught her child to speak up but froze in the face of injustice? In that moment, Emily's gaze shifted, landing on a scruffy stray dog lurking nearby, as if it had emerged from the shadows just for her. Was it a chance for her daughter to see bravery modeled by a creature shaped not by kindness but by survival? For a heartbeat, Emily reached out, a silent plea wrapped in innocence, and Sarah felt resistance dissolve momentarily. She had to act, but could she? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension escalated as the dog bolted into the chaos, yapping wildly, a fierce beacon of loyalty and life amidst the hostility. Sarah inhaled sharply, the scene unfolding like a slow-burning flash of hope and fear. Would this dog's bravado encourage the teenagers to back down? Would Sarah's choice to intervene resonate with Emily? But in the midst of all that chaos, the old man slipped out of sight, unnoticed and uncared for. Sarah felt the anguish clawing at her. Was standing up doing justice when no one else cared? As the sirens wailed in the distance, Sarah's heart raced. Doubt knotted within her, mingled with desperation. The question remained unasked: could the struggle for recognition, dignity, and love ever truly align in their world before it was too late? The chaos around her heightened Sarah's awareness, each sound reverberating in her chest like a drum echoing her internal conflict. The dog yipped and circled, defying the aggression of the teenagers, embodying a resolve that Sarah envied. Could she channel this energy? The breath caught in her throat, both terrified and exhilarated by the potential of the moment. It was as if the stray dog had nestled itself in her consciousness, challenging her to confront not only the situation at hand but her own insecurities. With Emily watching, clinging to the last shred of innocence, Sarah felt a battle stir within. What would her mother want her to do? Would Edna ever recognize the courage it took to act? Each heartbeat thundered with the weight of maternal duty, instigating a question that reverberated through her: how far was she willing to go for her child? Driven by an impulse she didn't entirely understand, Sarah stood, moving forward before her mind could overpower her resolve. As she approached the confrontational scene, adrenaline coursed through her veins, sharpening her senses. The teenagers were caught off guard, their laughter faltering as the scruffy dog lunged, barking ferociously. The elderly man was still nowhere in sight. He had evaded the raucousness, but within Sarah, a switch had flipped. "Hey! Leave him alone!" Sarah's voice rang out, steady and firm, surprising herself as the words cascaded from her lips. The teenagers paused, their mockery flickering into narrow-eyed disbelief. It was a vulnerability exposed, three would-be bullies suddenly up against an eloquent challenge. Emboldened by the dog's ferocity, Sarah felt the tether of her fears begin to unravel. In that visceral space, she grasped something unspoken yet imperative. She needed to be strong, not for herself, but for Emily. The confrontation morphed into a staring contest, and Sarah met their eyes with fierce determination. "This isn't cool. You're stronger than this. Why pick on someone who can't defend themselves?" In that moment, a ripple spread through the group. One of the teens, seemingly hesitant, glanced at his friends. There was an opening there, a thread of doubt in their armor of bravado. Would they back off? Would they slink away, beaten not physically, but in spirit? Emily stepped closer, her small hand reaching for the protective dog that still stood firm. Sarah's heart swelled with pride, watching her daughter absorb the lesson playing out. It was one thing to preach about morality, it was another to witness it unfold in real time. Sarah's resolve tightened. "Stand up for what's right, always," she instructed Emily, catching her daughter's eye. Emily nodded, her innocent enthusiasm repackaged into a budding resilience. As the tension lingered, an unseen balancing act of courage and fear, the dog settled beside Emily, panting despite the adrenaline. The teenagers began to withdraw, murmuring among themselves, unsure how to respond to the newfound resistance. The sight of the protective dog nestled there, a reminder of loyalty and unexpected strength, played a final card in the game. In a fleeting moment of victory, Sarah recognized endorphins surging, driven by affirmation. But just as realization began to anchor itself, another siren blared close by, pulling their attention. The weight of the world seeped back in, the old man was still missing. Would he be all right? That thought hung heavily, the potential for deeper ramifications echoing between them. Sarah knew that bravery didn't always lead to tidy conclusions, and yet, with Emily by her side, they had taken a leap, aligning themselves with strength they hadn't known they possessed. As the teenagers retreat, Sarah wasn't just relieved, she was transformed, if only slightly, her vision expansive. Beneath the surface of her previous doubts lay a burgeoning authority that promised growth. Each difficult moment was a testament to her evolution, a mother learning to stand up not only for others but, ultimately, for herself. But then, in her renewed clarity, a shadow crossed her mind. What awaited her return home? Would Edna's opinions overshadow her small triumph today? Would Sarah have the courage to defend her own choices against her mother before the day was over? The sirens continued, more pressing, as she exchanged a glance with Emily, both aware that the day had just begun, and the challenges were far from over. Would this newfound strength hold against the familiar tides of doubt surging just beneath the surface? The sirens faded, but the aftermath of confrontation lingered like a heavy fog settling over Sarah's mind. Each breath felt laden with a fresh kind of purpose mixed with uncertainty. She realized she'd made a stand, yet there was a shivering fragility thrumming within her. What had happened in that small, transformative pocket of time felt monumental yet perilous, a razor's edge between courage and recklessness. "Mom, is the man gonna be okay?" Emily's voice pulled Sarah back to the present, her expression a blend of concern and innocence. The child's small frame leaned against the dog, her curiosity echoed in her wide eyes. In that moment, Sarah recognized the enormity of her responsibility, not just to protect her daughter but to shape her understanding of courage. "We're going to find out," Sarah replied, her gaze scanning the crowd, searching for any sign of the elderly man. The sirens had grown distant, but the urgency still crackled in the air. Sarah felt an internal shift. She was no longer just another bystander in the chaos of her life. Today, she had taken the first steps into agency. As they moved toward the nearby coffee stand, the comforting aroma wafting through the air felt reassuring. This simple pleasure, standing together with Emily, allowed Sarah to contemplate her recent choices. Did standing up to the teenagers mean her life would mandate confrontation now? Could she replicate that courage in other spheres, particularly at home? Isn't it sad? They were just being mean for no reason, Emily mused, her small hands clutching the dog's collar. The honesty in her observation pierced through Sarah, setting off a string of internal reflections. How many times had she remained silent in the face of Edna's criticisms or control? The thought ignited a smoldering force deep within her, an urge to stand firm, not only for Emily but for herself. Sometimes people feel big by making others feel small, Sarah said, hoping to instill a lesson about empathy. It's our job not to let that stand. Emily nodded solemnly, a blend of comprehension and unease resting on her brow. A moment later, she raised her small voice, like when Grandma says you can't do things. Sarah's heart pounded. Suddenly, the air felt thicker, the stakes of her honesty rising. How could she peel back the layers of her complicated familial relationships without breaking her daughter's innocent perception? Yes, something like that. But it's important to talk back when it matters, she articulated carefully, feeling the weight of her words. As they sat on a bench sipping warm drinks, the stray dog nestled between them. Each moment of comfort contrasted sharply with the tumult that brewed inside Sarah. A potential clash with Edna awaited her. The looming confrontation over her newfound assertiveness filled her thoughts with dread. Would she have the strength to uphold her values and defend her actions? In that slice of time, Sarah's resolve began to solidify. She was a protective barrier for Emily, not solely in physical confrontations but against emotional storms, the uncertainty of which felt as ominous as the sirens in the distance. Would vulnerability become her strength, or merely another trait to be exploited? The world around her blurred as the cafe bustled with life, people laughing and chatting with ease. Inside, she felt the irony. She was forging a stronger identity while questioning her very foundation. Time slipped by, and the realization washed over her: yesterday's weaknesses had turned into today's growth opportunities. The fear of judgment loomed large, but as she glimpsed a nearby reflection in the cafe window, she didn't recognize the defeated woman she had been just a day prior. A different Sarah looked back, one determined to reclaim her narrative. Yet a question tugged at her conscience: would this new revelation last? As she glanced at Emily, her daughter's contentment a stark reminder of her purpose, the sirens still murmured in the background of her thoughts. What lay ahead? Sarah felt the threshold of transformation rise before her, and as she squared her shoulders, she caught herself contemplating the price of genuine self-advocacy. Was she prepared to pay it? The journey to confront Edna loomed larger than life, but perhaps, just perhaps, the weight of fear would one day shift to the strength of conviction. The day was far from over, and as they finished their drinks and prepared to head home, Sarah understood deep down that true confrontation awaited, not just with Edna, but with herself. Would she find the resolve to face what was coming, or would she falter at the final reckoning? As Sarah and Emily walked home, the vibrant colors of the setting sun cast long shadows on the pavement, mirroring the uncertainty shaping Sarah's thoughts. Each step away from the cafe felt heavier, weighed down by the growing anticipation of her impending confrontation with Edna. It was not merely a meeting, it was shaping to be a collision of wills. Emily chatted about the day, her voice a lilting melody cutting through the weight surrounding Sarah. Each innocent question her daughter posed felt like a gentle tug, pulling her deeper into the roles she had to balance: parent, daughter, and now, assertive individual. "Mom, can we get ice cream on our way home?" Emily asked, her eyes sparkling with youthful enthusiasm. "Sure," Sarah replied absent-mindedly, preoccupied with what she had to confront at home. Ice cream would be a welcome distraction, yet it provided no real escape from the inner turmoil. She started imagining the moment she would stand up to Edna, the confrontation marking a pivotal shift in her life. Yet with that imagined scene came the pangs of self-doubt. Would she eloquently express her feelings? Would she crumble under the weight of Edna's criticism? The bus station loomed ahead, a confluence of strangers encased in their own scenarios, hurried directions, and muffled announcements. It felt strangely fitting, the chaos of the station reflective of the contemplation barreling through her mind. As they approached the bus stop, she caught sight of a young girl, no older than Emily, standing nervously next to an older woman. The girl's fingers were fidgeting, glancing anxiously at the wider world while the woman tapped her foot impatiently. "Look at that girl, Mom," Emily said, pointing. "She looks scared." The observation caught Sarah's attention, drawing her from the confines of her swirling thoughts. She studied the girl, noting the way her shoulders tightened, and her eyes flickered between the oncoming buses and the woman beside her, likely her mother. Suddenly, Sarah felt a surge of recognition, a reflection of her own apprehensions that paralleled the girl's predicament. It dawned on her that this child was communicating a silent challenge. There was strength in vulnerability, in the shared human experience of facing fear head-on. In that moment, Sarah realized she could approach her confrontation with Edna similarly, acknowledging vulnerability as a source of strength. Navigating her relationships, she began to understand, required grounding her footing in her newfound courage. It was no longer merely about standing tall against Edna but also about embracing the apprehension that came with it. "Mom," Emily's voice pulled her back, "can we help her?" The prompt was rooted in empathy, reminding Sarah of the fabric of connection that intertwined their lives. Feeling encouraged, Sarah stepped forward without a second thought, guiding Emily along. She approached the girl, offering a warm smile. "Hey there, are you all right?" The girl's hesitant gaze met hers, and for a moment, the air thickened with a shared unspoken understanding. "I'm just waiting for my bus," she mumbled, her small voice a mix of unease and defiance. "Waiting can be tough, can't it?" Sarah said, cautious and inviting. "Do you want to join us while you wait?" The girl considered the offer, glancing at her mother's impatient demeanor before nodding slowly. Sarah felt a release within her. Standing up for someone else awakened a fire she had yet to explore fully. As they began chatting, stories flowed between them. For the first time since the cafe, Sarah felt her heart ease. Perhaps confrontation didn't solely involve direct conflict. It could also embody acts of solidarity and support and understanding of one another's fears, leading to a newfound courage shared amongst them. But as the bus pulled into view, reality returned like an unwelcome gust of wind, cutting through this new calm. The girls' bus arrived, and with it, the reminder that Sarah's reckoning with Edna was still ahead, looming larger than the station itself. The girl waved goodbye, her eyes glimmering with gratitude. In that fleeting connection, Sarah found a flicker of hope. She could stand her ground, not alone but surrounded by the understanding that vulnerability indeed equated to strength, even in the face of daunting confrontation. As Emily and Sarah boarded their own bus, the weight of uncertainty lingered, accompanied by an almost palpable resolve crackling in the air. Would this new clarity empower her to challenge Edna when the moment came, or would she retreat into familiar patterns of silence and acquiescence? At that moment, Sarah's heart raced, teetering on the precipice of transformation. The clarity of her journey ahead burned brightly. Would she muster the courage to take the leap she so desperately craved, or would fear dictate her next move? The bus lurched forward, and Sarah gripped the overhead rail, her thoughts swirling amid the sounds of the engine and chatter around her. The brief encounter with the young girl echoed in her mind, stirring an unexpected surge of determination. Just minutes ago, she had found herself reaching out, connecting in a way she had long thought impossible. It wasn't merely a moment of compassion, it was a glimpse of what personal assertiveness might feel like, a flicker of empowerment igniting within her. As they settled into their seats, Emily busied herself by peering out the window, her distraction a reminder of the innocence Sarah yearned to protect, even as her own adult concerns burrowed deeper. She observed her daughter's bright eyes scanning the outside world, the sheer joy of a simple journey. If only it could be that straightforward for her when confronting her own fears. The thought nagged at her, pushing against her old, entrenched notions of what it meant to confront. "Mom," Emily piped up suddenly, "do you think that girl will be okay?" The question hung in the air, compelling Sarah to forge a response rooted not in her own fear, but rather in the strength she was beginning to find. "Yeah, I think she'll be okay. Sometimes it just takes a little courage to face what's scary." Emily nodded, taking in her mother's words. But for Sarah, the statement felt like an admission of the larger truths unfolding within her. Could she practice what she preached? A wave of uncertainty ebbed and flowed through her stomach at the thought of Edna's inevitable response. The bus wove through familiar streets, each block a visual reprieve that contrasted sharply with the mental battle waging within her. Sarah took a deep breath, projecting onto her surroundings the calm she sought internally. She couldn't deny the frustration that had built over time, the oppressive weight of Edna's presence in both her professional and personal life. The more she replayed their past encounters, the more her mind pictured Edna's knowing smirk, underscoring the authority she wielded like a weapon. But that girl at the bus station and her own instinct to help took root in Sarah's mind, transforming from a mere distraction into a reminder of her own resilience. If she didn't speak up for herself, how could she model bravery for Emily? Each tick of the bus's clock mirrored Sarah's own ticking cadence. The readiness to take a leap of faith had arrived. When they arrived home, the familiarity of her place felt disconcerting. The walls seemed to close in on her as she set her bag down, each item resumed its space in a designated order that now felt constrictive. In the back of her mind, Edna's words still echoed, "You're not fit to take on the role." An image of Edna holding court loomed, unyielding, and Sarah imagined the dispassionate gaze that would assess her every word, dissect her weaknesses. "Let us make dinner together." Emily's voice broke through the growing tension. That simple offer made Sarah pause, catalyzing a shift. "Sure, what do you want to cook?" As they moved through the motions of chopping vegetables and stirring pots, Sarah felt each moment of shared laughter peel away layers of hesitation. Cooking with Emily brought back the familiarity of connection she craved. Perhaps this was the space to prepare not just dinner, but also herself for the confrontation with Edna. 3 hours later, after a satisfying meal punctuated by content conversation, the living room settled into a comforting hush. But the looming conversation with Edna still lay ahead. Her phone buzzed with the familiar name flashing across the screen, no doubt, a reminder of the impending conflict. The moment of truth was upon her, palpable and unyielding. Sarah took a deep breath, the air heavy with unresolved tension. What awaited her on that call could either be a reiteration of her doubts or a definitive reclamation of her voice. Sarah's heart raced in anticipation as she hovered over the phone. Would she finally embrace the power of her own truth, or would she retreat once more into the shadows of silence? The phone rang, an unrelenting buzz that sliced through the silence like a sharp knife. Sarah's finger hovered over the screen, indecision hanging thick in the air. This was at the moment she had both dreaded and longed for. Each pulse of the ringtone reverberated in her chest, reminding her of the vulnerable side she had cloaked beneath layers of self-doubt. Finally, she pressed accept, forcing herself to meet whatever awaited her on the other end. "Edna," she began, her tone steadier than she felt, "I appreciate you calling." The words emerged hesitantly, struggling against the weight of familiarity. How had she allowed this authority to loom so large in her life? "Sarah, thank you for picking up. We need to discuss your recent project proposal. To be frank, I have some reservations." Edna's cool voice dripped with condescension, a tone meant to assert dominance. Each word crackled through the phone with an edge that tugged at Sarah's frustration. "Reservations?" Sarah echoed, her heartbeat quickening. "I thought we had discussed the plan in detail during our last meeting." She felt a shift within herself. This was a challenge, and she wasn't going to wilt under it. A sharp intake of breath on Edna's side signaled annoyance. Yes, but revisions are necessary. You're not exactly in a position to dictate terms here, she said, her tone dripping with superiority. Something within Sarah snapped. The girl at the bus station and those first tentative connections echoed in her mind. She was tired of letting Edna's words paralyze her. What I mean to say, Edna, is that I believe my approach is sound and I'm prepared to justify it. The silence that followed was palpable, a stillness heavy with surprise. Not backing down felt empowering, but the thrill was also underscored by anxiety. Each word had become an act of defiance against the clichés that had defined her reality. Casual rejection punctuated with a dismissive air had long been Edna's forte, but now, Sarah was reauthoring the narrative. Justify it? Edna's incredulous tone sparked a little fire of determination. Sarah, let us not forget your track record. Actually, Sarah interjected, her heart racing fiercely in her chest, I'm eager to highlight my successes. I have made considerable progress in our projects, and those results speak for themselves. I'd like to present data at our next meeting to back it up. Each word was a step she felt solidly planted on. Edna's response was surely one of disbelief, but it also held a hint of respect wrapped with her annoyance. Fine. You can present your case, but be ready to hear my perspective, too. Of course, Sarah replied, surprising even herself with the confidence in her voice. The conversation shifted gears, she was no longer an automaton under Edna's thumb but an equal participant. She vowed to arm herself with facts, insights, and the clarity of her vision. They ended the call, and Sarah sat back, a rush of mixed emotions flooding her. Was this the growth she had sought? Maybe Edna wasn't the monster she had crafted in her mind. Perhaps the shift began with her voice and the courage to stand by her work. As she instinctively reached for her notepad, heart racing with the prospect of preparation, another wave of revelation washed over her. This was more than just about a project, it was a mirror reflecting her growth. But peace was fleeting, the nagging question followed her, urging her onward. If she could stand up now, what other challenges awaited? Who else would she encounter that could threaten her newfound foothold? Resilience flourished within her as she recognized the inevitable. The stakes were rising, and the next confrontation wasn't merely professional. She had awakened a sense of agency that would extend into every corner of her life. This realization sparked another tension. If Edna was just one opponent, who else in her life could undermine her newfound strength? Instinct turned into resolve as Sarah prepared to delve deeper into her journey, the next challenge looming just beyond the horizon. With one breath, she allowed herself to embrace the thrill of uncertainty. Tomorrow would bring new battles, but she was determined to confront them head-on. Would she emerge empowered, or would her courage falter when it mattered most? The next day dawned with uncertainty casting a slight shadow over Sarah's excitement. Her heart raced as she prepared her presentation, meticulous notes arrayed in front of her like soldiers ready for battle. Each data point was a testament to her hard work, each insight a brick in the foundation of her assertion. She was about to step into a ring where only yesterday, she would have been content to stay on the sidelines. What struck her was not just the importance of the project but what this moment signified personally. Standing there, before her computer screen, flicking through slides, she understood she wasn't just fighting for the project, she was fighting for herself, what she wanted her career to be, and how she wanted to be seen. Adrenaline surged in her veins, pushing away the lingering doubts crawling in her mind. Arriving at the office, the atmosphere felt charged. Sarah could sense the tension. Edna and the team were already gathered in the conference room. The door loomed like a gateway to a battlefield. She took a deep breath, recalling the small victories that had brought her here, the connections made at the bus station, the budding friendships, the spark of assertiveness that she now recognized as her own. These experiences fortified her tenacity. They were reminders that she was capable of more than she had ever given herself credit for. As she entered, all eyes turned toward her. A faint tremor accompanied her steps, but she steadied herself, recalling the conversation that had ignited this fire within her. Edna's smug expression met her own firm glance, and for a split second, both women understood the stakes. "Thank you for joining," Edna began, her voice a mix of practiced professionalism and predatory coolness. "Let us hear what you have for us, Sarah." "Thank you, Edna," Sarah replied, her voice strong and clear, feeling the slightest tug of empowerment wash over her, eager to shed the ghost of self-doubt. She launched into her presentation, seamlessly navigating through charts and analyses that revealed her project's potential. Enthusiasm infused her words, she was convinced, and that conviction rippled through her audience. As she spoke, she watched Edna's expressions shift from skepticism to grudging attention. Collaboration brewed in the room as team members nodded, responding positively to her suggestions. With every slide, Sarah's posture strengthened. She was no longer the hesitant employee but a passionate advocate for her ideas. However, as the presentation reached its climax, Edna's voice cut through with a sharpness that made Sarah hesitate. "Impressive, but let us discuss the potential shortcomings. After all, your previous projects have the words hung in the air, a reminder of the past failures Sarah constantly fought to overcome." For a moment, the room felt like a pressure cooker. She clenched her fists beneath the table, feeling the familiar tug of insecurity. This was at the moment that could either shatter or solidify her resolve. The fear slithered back into her thoughts, threatening to unravel her hard-earned confidence. But as she caught the eyes of her colleagues, something flickered within. This was no longer just about her, it was about asserting her vision for the team. "I appreciate your concerns, Edna, and I'm ready to address them directly," she said, heart pounding but resolute. "Let us consider not just the risks but the robust strategies I've developed to manage them effectively." The words spilled out with clarity, each one an affirmation of her resilience and determination. The dialogue shifted rather than a confrontation, it became a discussion. Sarah found herself stepping confidently into her next role, not merely as a participant, but as a leader who wielded her voice with purpose. The conversation evolved as she deftly maneuvered through objections, her passion igniting similar fervor in others. They rallied, collectively weighing her insights against Edna's critiques. The electric air in the room changed, teamwork began to flourish as newfound allies began to recognize her hidden capabilities. When the meeting wrapped up, an unexpected sense of camaraderie lingered among her colleagues, and for the first time, Sarah didn't just feel included, she felt respected. Yet, just as hope surged within, she recalled the lingering shadows of her past, stoking doubts about her ability to sustain this newfound confidence against future challenges. Who would be waiting around the corner to test her resolve next? The unanswered questions loomed, leaving Sarah poised on the brink of even greater challenges waiting in the wings. Would forging ahead broaden her horizons, or would she find herself faltering under pressure? The day had turned pivotal, yet another realization crept into her thoughts: true strength meant being prepared to face discomfort in the pursuit of growth. The countdown to her next challenge commenced, propelling her forward in a quest for clarity, deeper understanding, and perhaps, even greater battles that lay ahead. The following week unfolded with a surprising buoyancy surrounding Sarah. Learning to harness the reverberations of her successful presentation pushed her into a new mind space, one filled with anticipation of opportunities rather than dread of mistakes. Yet, shadows of uncertainty remained, lurking at the edges of her newfound confidence. The morning began like any other, yet there was an electric charge in the air that hinted at change. As she settled into her desk, her mind replayed the scenes of her transformed interaction with the team. Had her assertiveness truly reshaped their perceptions? As she pondered, an email pinged into her inbox, instantly diverting her attention. It was an invitation to lead a new project team, a group formed to tackle a particularly challenging initiative. The thought sent a thrill through her, tangled with an unexpected anxiety. Was she ready for this? The familiar pang of self-doubt crept back in, whispering about the risks of failure. It threatened to swallow the spark she had recently kindled. In a moment of defiance, she shut her eyes and took a deep breath. The disparity in her feelings was undeniable, excitement battling apprehension. She decided to take a proactive approach rather than allow the fear to consume her. Sarah gathered her materials from her previous project and crafted a strategic outline, considering potential pitfalls and the strategies she could employ to navigate them. By the time she met her new team, her palms were clammy, and her heart raced not from mere nervousness, but from the weight of expectation she felt pressing down. The conference room felt different this time. Her colleagues, those who had supported her, now looked at her not just as a participant, but as the leader of the group. "Good morning, everyone. I'm thrilled to embark on this journey with you all," Sarah began, her tone deliberately steady. "As we dive into this project, I want us to think not just about the end goal, but about how we can work collaboratively to turn our individual strengths into collective advantages." Their faces mirrored cautious optimism, and as she laid out her ideas, Sarah felt different. The words flowed more easily. She was engaging her team, not just speaking at them. In that moment, she realized leadership was less about command and more about fostering unity. Positive feedback came swiftly, from tentative nods to constructive suggestions that hinted at a team ready to roll up their sleeves. But just as she felt a shift towards teamwork, Edna, who had remained quietly lurking in the background, jumped into the conversation. "While I appreciate the enthusiasm, we need to realistically assess the potential limitations this project poses," she interjected, her voice laced with skepticism. Instinctively, Sarah's heart sank. Edna's critiques threatened to throw off the fragile balance of excitement and collaboration she had established. Yet, standing firm, she chose to reflect on the past again, on that moment during her presentation when she had confronted similar doubts. "Absolutely, Edna, I recognize the challenges," Sarah replied, gathering her composure. "However, I also believe that with our combined expertise, we can anticipate these obstacles and create effective strategies to overcome them." As they engaged in an open dialogue, Sarah began to notice her team rallying around her. Ideas sparked, creativity ignited, and what had once felt heavy and uncertain began transforming into a kaleidoscope of possibilities. There was genuine engagement, seeing their energy reflected back in her own growing assurance. The meeting concluded with a concrete plan and newfound enthusiasm, but beneath her exhilaration, Sarah felt the specter of Edna's criticism linger. What Edna represented was a constant reminder of past failures, the fork in her journey where she could either succumb to the negativity or rise above it. Walking back to her desk, she realized that this challenge was a test not of her competence, but of her resilience. She wasn't merely navigating a project but expanding her own identity as a leader. Now the question loomed larger than ever: could she maintain her newfound confidence while tackling the adversities sure to follow? With each step, she internalized the mantra of rising above doubt, coming to terms with the reality that true leadership involved embracing challenges and cultivating hope amidst skepticism. As the week progressed and the tasks piled up, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility tangling her visions of success. How would she sustain this trust her team had begun to place in her? Venturing into this uncharted territory, Sarah steeled herself. The moment for reflection and growth was approaching. What she didn't yet know was that an unexpected encounter loomed ahead, one that would ignite a deeper understanding of her own leadership capabilities. The following day arrived with a stillness that felt almost ominous. Sarah began to sense her confidence being tested anew. The thrill of leading her project team lingered, but alongside it was an unsettling awareness that the weight of responsibility could quickly shift to a heavy burden if not managed properly. As her colleagues settled into a rhythm, the looming presence of Edna's skepticism lurked ominously in the back of her mind. She began relying more on her strategic outline, though the more she pored over it, the more doubts crept in. Was she truly prepared to lead them through the challenges ahead? Her heart pounded with apprehension as she prepared for a follow-up meeting with Edna, who had expressed interest in discussing budget allocations that might constrain their creative plans. Underneath her meticulously crafted plan, an anxiety festered, a fear that all her efforts could be dismantled by one person's opposition. As she sat at her desk, organizing her thoughts for the meeting, the faces of her team members flashed through her mind, each one reflecting the hope she had ignited in them during their last gathering. This was about much more than just a project, it was about proving to herself that she was capable. Yet, she faced Edna, a seasoned colleague, who seemed to delight in pointing out every conceivable flaw. The meeting room was hushed when Sarah entered, her resolve faltering for an instant. Edna sat confidently at the table with a critical glint in her eye. As Sarah began presenting her ideas on budget allocation, she felt as though each word was laced with the expectation of dismissal. "It's ambitious, Sarah," Edna began, folding her hands in front of herself, her demeanor calm and calculative. "But how do you plan to ensure that we stay within these financial limits while still achieving the project's full potential?" Sarah's stomach twisted. She could feel the weight of Edna's gaze like a spotlight exposing her every insecurity. But she only had to recall her earlier victories, how she had revitalized the team's energy, how they had united behind a singular vision. "I understand your concerns, Edna," she started, battling to steady her voice. "What I envision here isn't just about cutting costs, it's about leveraging our strengths to create innovative solutions that maximize our impact and our budget." Edna arched an eyebrow, but the atmosphere shifted slightly. Sarah continued, expanding on strategies for resource allocation and potential areas to secure cost savings that wouldn't compromise the quality of their work. Each point she articulated reinforced her belief in the team's capabilities, in her own growing leadership. With each rebuttal Edna presented, Sarah's confidence hardened. Engaging Edna in a debate became a mental exercise, one that deepened her understanding of both the project's needs and her own leadership style. She began to sense the subtle agreement of the others in the room, they shifted in their seats, a hopeful energy building around her words. "Perhaps we need a compromise," Edna finally conceded, her tone softer. "If we work on a phased approach, we can ensure the budget holds while still maintaining quality." A surge of relief washed over Sarah. This was not the end of the conversation. She would need to combat skepticism regularly. Yet, every agreement felt like a small victory, fortifying the ground beneath her feet. After the meeting, Sarah took a moment in the empty conference room, breathing deeply. Despite earlier doubts, she had not only survived the encounter but emerged with her ideas intact. Now, she had learned that assertiveness could coexist with openness to feedback, marking a crucial step in her journey toward self-assurance. As she prepared to leave for the day, a message pinged in her inbox. It was from the team, thanking her for her guidance in the meeting. Their trust felt like a fragile but tangible thread connecting them. Yet that same day, a new email also arrived, one that carried an invitation to validate her leadership in ways she hadn't anticipated. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, she opened the message, her heart racing. Would this be another opportunity to prove herself, or an unwelcome shift that could unravel her progress? The direction of her journey seemed poised precariously at the edge of a decision, and she realized the true challenge lay ahead. What awaited her on the horizon would demand strengths she had yet to discover. The sun filtered softly through the kitchen window as Sarah prepared breakfast, a familiar rhythm grounding her as she whipped eggs and brewed coffee. The lingering haze of uncertainty from the previous days had shifted, she had emerged not just unscathed but empowered. Her confrontation with Edna at work had ignited a new understanding of her capabilities. Each decision she was now able to make while advocating for her ideas brought waves of recognition and excitement. The energy in her team, once tentative, was now buoyant, each member riding on their collective potential. But this morning, clarity had a companion, resolve. The message from her team had affirmed her belief in collaboration and creativity. Their support went beyond just camaraderie, it reflected growth, not only in the project but within herself. As she poured coffee into 2 mugs, Emily entered the kitchen, her hair tousled in endearing chaos, a picture of innocence untainted by adult worries. "Good morning, Mom," Emily chirped, her bright smile radiating warmth and reminding Sarah why she had fought through her insecurities. "Good morning," ready for another day of camp?" Sarah asked with a grin, her heart swelling with maternal pride. Emily nodded enthusiastically, blissfully unaware of the storms brewing in a mother's heart. Serene moments passed, and though they lingered on light-hearted banter over scrambled eggs and fruit, an undercurrent of conflict swirled as Sarah replayed her impending encounter with Edna. But she startled herself. The thought no longer generated debilitating fear. Instead, it sparked determination to stand her ground, but not in a shrouded, reluctant manner. She wanted to assert herself clearly, firmly, yet respectfully. With renewed purpose, she set off for work, the rhythm of the city humming beneath her as she navigated through its pulse. The challenges ahead felt less daunting. She was armed with the understanding that courage stemmed from confronting rather than retreating. Stepping into the office, Sarah felt a surge of confidence. The conversations that transpired in the previous week had fostered a spirit of collaboration among her colleagues. Their acknowledgement of her leadership had forged bonds she never anticipated. She now recognized the importance of stepping into her strengths, rather than navigating through fear. As she settled in, she could hear Edna's voice from across the room, a conversational hum that filled the air. The stifling atmosphere of competence mixed with simmering tension made her spine straighten with purpose. Today was the day she would assert her vision for the project during the upcoming team meeting. With her stomach knotted in anticipation, she organized her notes and took a deep breath. The conference room awaited, ready to witness the next chapter of her journey. But this time, Sarah was ready not just to defend her ideas but to empower her team and galvanize their collective vision. When the meeting commenced, Sarah noticed her colleagues' body language shifted from ambivalence to encouragement upon her arrival. She opened the floor for discussion, creating an inclusive environment. "Thank you all for your hard work so far," she began, feeling the warmth of their support. "Let us work together today to fine-tune our strategies and push forward." She shared significant insights she gathered over the last few days, interspersed with encouragement directed at her teammates. The room hummed with energy as conversation flourished, ideas bouncing off one another, fueling creativity until they took on a life of their own. Only then did Sarah realize, she was thriving in this role. As the discussion peaked, Edna's voice sliced through the collaborative camaraderie. "While I appreciate the enthusiasm, I'm concerned about our approach and the level of risk we are willing to take," she asserted, reclaiming the stage and shifting the room's atmosphere. For a moment, Sarah felt the familiar tendrils of self-doubt creep back, yet they couldn't linger long. She had armed herself with knowledge, with experience. And above all, she was motivated by the faith her colleagues had bestowed upon her. "Thank you for your concerns, Edna. I understand this project carries risks, but I also believe that great innovation stems from calculated risks. Here's how we plan to mitigate those challenges and make this vision a reality," she countered, presenting her research and clearly articulated strategies. With that, the tides turned. Edna listened, and conversation flowed in a direction that reflected Sarah's leadership. Other team members contributed, rallying around Sarah's points and expanding their ideas further. They gathered at the intersection of uncertainty and excitement, and together they chose empowerment. After the meeting concluded, a wave of relief washed over Sarah. She had not only defended her positions but had inspired a thorough discussion, transforming doubt into potential. The room buzzed with renewed enthusiasm, coalescing around a shared vision. As Edna stepped forward, Sarah braced herself, expecting skepticism, yet instead was met with acknowledgement. "Good job today, Sarah," Edna said, her tone surprisingly neutral. "There's a lot of potential here if we can channel this energy effectively." A grin broke across Sarah's face, her heart surging with accomplishment. For so long, she had feared this encounter not just with Edna, but with herself. Yet in that conference room, she'd grown into her role with courage, power, and an unwavering sense of purpose. As they prepared to move forward with the projects, Sarah savored the moment, recognizing it as a defining moment not merely for her professional path but her personal evolution as well. She had transcended boundaries, learning to navigate not through chaos, but with poised determination. Returning home that evening, Sarah felt the weight of complacency lift. Her triumph resonated deeply. She had moved from silence into force, a journey of resilience and discovery. And yet, she understood that the path was ongoing. Each new challenge would bring fresh lessons. With her heart full and head high, she greeted Emily with a confident embrace, ready to hear about the day while openly sharing her own victories. As she reflected on all she had achieved, a new understanding blossomed. True strength lay in the courage to embrace change, confrontation, and most importantly, herself. Tomorrow would be another day to forge ahead, but today, she had conquered fear, celebrated collaboration, and ignited the spark of transformation that would guide her into the unfolding journey ahead. Now is the time to affirm your commitment to growth. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support the journey of personal overcoming. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to share. Comment below with your thoughts and theories about Sarah's transformation. Join the conversation and be a part of this empowering community.